Hello everyone, my name is Cody Engelsma and I am a coral reproduction technician at Mote Marine Laboratory here in the Keys. So here we have our microscope, and this is actually a camera up here, and what that allows me to do is actually connect it to my computer and we can see what I see. That's a coral, and then I can fine tune a little bit. So here we have all the different polyps. This is essentially what the polyp sits in. It sits in what you call a corallite, which is like the skeletal structure that kind of pops up a little bit. And then what I can do, I can actually base the coral, and then you can see a lot of the surrounding tissue a lot better. So they'll pull in their polyps when they're disturbed, and then you can also see a little bit of the white. That's actually their skeleton protruding from their tissue. And so with these tentacles, the coral will actually feed on little things that may be in the water, any kind of plankton. And depending on the size of the coral will depend on the size of the food. So staghorn has really small polyps, so it wouldn't be able to eat anything really that large. Whereas ophov, their polyps are much larger, and this is a small polyp for an ophov. He'd be able to feed on something much bigger. So, and we can actually zoom in. That's one single polyp. And then, so that's the mouth right there, and then these are the surrounding tentacles. And then, if you look really closely, let's see if I can actually zoom in a little bit more, you'll actually be able to see individual zooxanthellae in the tentacles. Oh. You can kind of see these little dots all around with clear tissue, and that would actually be the zooxanthellae. And so, zooxanthellae give the corals most of their color. So any type of brownish color would be the zooxanthellae in the coral, whereas you start seeing this white, that would actually be proteins that the coral's making itself. Oh. So if this coral were to bleach, it would essentially expel all its zooxanthellae. This coral would look white because of its white skeleton. And then you wouldn't actually be able to see these white specks, probably because white on white. But some other corals have kind of a greenish color to them, some have a little bit of a red, and oftentimes that's a protein or the tissue itself.
Okay.
So
what do we feed our coral here?
So majority of the time for restoration we don't. If we see some corals that aren't looking very healthy, we will. But because of the zooxanthellae, the corals actually get most of their nutrients and energy from there.
Gotcha.
But as working with baby corals, I've actually started to feed our corals a lot more often, just because that gives them just a little bit more nutrients and energy, just so that they can grow. Because we want our baby corals to be, to grow as fast as possible. So now what I'll show you is what I typically do every week just to do a coral assessment. So I have a very special folder here of the weekly photos that I take, and each coral has its own little folder. So I have about 5 corals I take a picture of every week because it is a very time-consuming process. Alrighty. So here's one of the first pictures that I took of this coral. He actually has 2 polyps here. So, and let's see. That was 9/16, so he's probably already a little less than a month old, about a month old.
There's no zooxanthellae at this point.
And so as I progressed, I just kept on taking photos of him. And then slowly you can start seeing CCA actually growing around him. And so that's something we would mitigate for by actually scraping it back, because the CCA competes with the coral for space. And so what would happen, right there you see I actually scraped it back. But what would normally happen is that CCA could actually outgrow this coral. But as you can see, he already has 4 polyps now. And so as he continues to grow, he's actually just started to uptake his zooxanthellae. Slowly, some more. And so now he's about fully infected, and now he's mostly going to start growing.
Oh, wow.
And that's about where we are today. And so what I do every day is I take care of all our baby corals that we got through sexual reproduction. And a lot of that involves siphoning the tanks that they're in from the snails that are cleaning the raceways, visual inspections to make sure they're all healthy. And then I have a few other odd tasks here and there where once the recruits are actually full grown, we can actually fragment them to get more replicates so that eventually we'll be able to implement these corals into coral restoration so that they can be outplanted onto the reef.